Imagine a ruthless outlaw, hidden deep in the Florida Everglades, waging a war against law enforcement and rum runners alike. John Ashley, known as the Swamp Bandit, defied the odds time and again with daring escapes, brazen heists, and a vendetta against the very sheriff sworn to bring him down. But what drove this man to a life of crime? How did he escape from a seemingly impossible jail cell, only to vanish into the swamps and return with more fury than ever? Well, watch till the end, because the truth is more shocking than you could ever imagine. Born on March 19, 1888, John Ashley became one of the most notorious outlaws in American history. Ashley was a bank robber and bootlegger, and he even dabbled in piracy. He made a name for himself in southern Florida during the 1910s and 1920s, where he operated mostly out of the Florida Everglades, a vast swampy wilderness that provided plenty of places to hide.
Ashley wasn't just any criminal. He was known as the King of the Everglades, or the Swamp Bandit. From 1915 to 1924, he and his gang managed to rob nearly $1 million from about 40 banks, a massive fortune at the time. But they didn't stop at banks. They also hijacked shipments of illegal whiskey being smuggled into Florida from the Bahamas. They were so good at it that they practically shut down rum running along the Florida coast. In fact, Ashley's gang was so bold that in 1924, they staged a two-man raid on the West End in the Bahamas. It was the first time in over a century that American pirates had attacked a British colony. For many poor folks in Florida, known as crackers, Ashley became something of a folk hero. To them, he was a symbol of resistance against the bankers, lawmen, and wealthy landowners who they felt oppressed them. Even the local newspapers often compared Ashley to Jesse James, the famous outlaw of the Wild West. People started blaming almost every major crime in Florida on Ashley and his gang. One state official even called him the biggest threat Florida had faced since the Seminole Wars. Ashley's story ended in 1924 after a nearly 13-year-long feud with Palm Beach County Sheriff George B. Baker. It was a showdown that cost Ashley and three of his top men their lives. His legend, however, lives on, a symbol of rebellion and defiance in a rapidly changing world. But first, let's rewind a bit. John Ashley was born and raised in the rugged backwoods along the Caloosahatchee River in a small community called Buckingham, near Fort Myers, Florida. He was one of 9 kids in the Ashley family. His father, Joe Ashley, was a poor Florida woodsman who made a living by fishing, hunting, and trapping otters. Life was tough, but the Ashleys were a resourceful bunch. In the 1890s, the family moved from Fort Myers to Pompano, where Joe and his older sons found work on a new railroad project, spearheaded by the famous industrialist Henry Flagler. By 1911, the Ashleys had moved again, this time to West Palm Beach. Joe Ashley even served a brief time as county sheriff. John spent much of his childhood exploring the vast Florida Everglades, becoming a skilled trapper and alligator hunter like his father. However, John Ashley's life took a dark turn on December 29, 1911. A dredging crew near Lake Okeechobee stumbled upon the body of DeSoto Tiger, a Seminole trapper. Suspicion quickly shifted to John after a Seminole named Jimmy Gopher reported seeing him with Tiger. The two had been last seen paddling down the river in a canoe loaded with otter hides, heading to market. The mystery deepened when the Gertman brothers, fur traders in Miami, confirmed John had sold them a haul of otter hides for $1,200. Complicating matters, John had been arrested the day before in West Palm Beach for recklessly displaying firearms. When deputies S.A. Barfield and Bob Hannon tracked John to a hidden campsite near Hobe Sound, John's brother, Bob Ashley, suddenly appeared with a gun and disarmed them. John let the deputies go, but warned Sheriff George B. Baker not to send any more chicken-hearted men with rifles. John's story became even more dramatic when he was put on trial for Tiger's murder. Despite the evidence, he was acquitted in 1910, but in 1915, he was sentenced to hang, only to have the Florida Supreme Court overturn the conviction. John Ashley, a master escape artist, continued eluding capture until he was finally shot at the St. Sebastian River Bridge in Roseland. When the Seminole Nation protested Tiger's murder, the U.S. government nearly intervened. Ashley fled to New Orleans, possibly worked as a logger in Seattle, and claimed to rob a bank in Canada. By 1914, he returned to Florida, hoping for a sympathetic local jury, but faced a determined prosecutor who pushed to move the trial to Miami. Hearing about the prosecutor's plan, Ashley knew he had to act fast. While being escorted to his cell by Sheriff George B. Baker's son, Robert C. Baker, Ashley saw his chance. He broke free, sprinted through an unlocked door, and climbed a 10-foot fence to escape yet again. This daring escape only added to his legend, leading to the formation of the infamous Ashley Gang. They became a band of outlaws that would go on to rob banks, hijack whiskey shipments, and make John Ashley a notorious figure in Florida's history. John and his brothers turned to a life of crime, forming a gang with some occasional partners. In 1915, John and his brother Bob, along with a Chicago mobster named Kid Lowe, tried their hand at robbing an FEC passenger train. But things didn't go as planned. They couldn't agree on who would handle which part of the job, whether to rob the passengers or the mail car, leading to a clumsy attempt. However, they had better luck later that year when they pulled off a bold bank robbery in broad daylight in Stuart, Florida, making off with $45,000 in silver and cash. During their escape, though, Kid Lowe accidentally shot John in the jaw, blinding him in one eye. When John sought medical help for his injury, he was captured and thrown into the Dade County Jail, awaiting trial. Initially, he was set to stand trial in Miami for the murder of DeSoto Tiger. However, the state's attorney thought they had a stronger case against him for the Stuart robberies, so he was transferred to West Palm Beach for trial. On June 2, 1915, Bob Ashley made a daring attempt to break John out of jail. He stormed into the jailer's house, shot Deputy Sheriff Wilbur W. Hendrickson at point-blank range, and grabbed the keys to the cells. He ran outside to find the getaway car that his gang had left, but he couldn't drive it. In a desperate move, he tried to force a few men at gunpoint to drive for him, but none knew how to handle the car. Frustrated, Bob jumped onto the running board of a passing truck and forced the driver, Teeth Duckett, to take him out of town. During the escape, a deputy named J.R. Ribley spotted them and gave chase. When the truck stalled in the middle of the street, a shootout ensued, resulting in the deaths of both Bob Ashley and Deputy Ribley. Bob's rampage angered many in Miami, and a mob of thousands gathered, threatening to storm the jailhouse and kill John Ashley. The mob only dispersed after police paraded Bob's body through the streets. Meanwhile, Kid Lowe, perhaps feeling guilty for injuring John, sent a threatening letter to the Dade County Sheriff, demanding John's release. He warned that if John wasn't given a fair trial, they would shoot up the town. Despite the threat, the Ashley gang never attacked, and the prosecution moved forward. John Ashley eventually pleaded guilty to robbery and was sentenced to 17 years in the state penitentiary at Rayford on November 23, 1916. Now, before his arrest, John had begun a relationship with Laura Upthegrove, who became the gang's lookout. Known as the Queen of the Everglades, Laura played a crucial role while John was in jail. She would warn the gang if the authorities were closing in, driving through secret backwoods trails, often without headlights if it was night. She also scouted banks and served as a getaway driver, taking a central role in the gang's activities during John's imprisonment. John Ashley seemed to be playing by the rules for a couple of years behind bars, but it was all just a smokescreen. On March 31, 1918, with help from fellow bank robber Tom Maddox, he made a bold escape from a road camp. This was right around the start of Prohibition, so Ashley and his gang quickly jumped into the illegal liquor business. They set up moonshine stills deep in the woods of Central Florida, brewing their own illegal alcohol. Even when Ashley was recaptured in June 1921, his gang kept the operation running smoothly. While Ashley sat in jail, his father, Joe, was busy running several stills in Palm Beach County. Meanwhile, John's brothers, Ed and Frank, were smuggling liquor from the Bahamas back to Jupiter Inlet in Stuart, Florida. The gang even started hijacking rum runners who were smuggling alcohol into the state, all under the leadership of gang members like Clarence Middleton and Roy Matthews. But then, in a strange twist, Ed and Frank mysteriously disappeared on a return trip from Bimini in October 1921. No one knew what happened to them. It was like they vanished into thin air.
As for John Ashley, his third and final escape from jail is shrouded in mystery. Somehow, he just vanished from his cell. Once out, he wasted no time reuniting with his gang and getting back to what he did best: robbing banks. One of their most daring heists came in September 1923, when they decided to rob the Stuart Bank for the second time. This time, they had a secret weapon: John's teenage nephew, Hanford Mobley. Disguised as a woman, Mobley sneaked into the bank and made off with several $1,000s. But the law was closing in fast. Shortly after the robbery, Mobley and Middleton were captured in Plant City, and Matthews was caught in Georgia. However, this gang had a knack for slipping away. All three managed to escape custody and were back hiding out in the woods near Gomez by the end of the year, ready to plan their next big score.
In November 1923, John Ashley and his gang pulled off a bold robbery, stealing $23,000 in cash and securities from a bank in Pompano, Florida. True to their daring style, they didn't just make a quiet getaway. Instead, they wrapped their loot in a bedsheet, jumped into a stolen taxi, and cruised slowly through town, waving a whiskey bottle and shouting, "We got it all," before speeding off. To rub salt in the wound, Ashley even handed a bullet to a bank employee, with instructions to give it to Sheriff Baker along with a chilling message, if he ever got out to the Glades. But Ashley's crimes didn't stop at bank heists. His gang also turned to piracy, targeting rum runners along Florida's southern coast. In 1924, Ashley and his nephew, Hanford Mobley, stole a boat and raided liquor warehouses in the Bahamas, making off with $8,000. They missed a chance at a bigger haul by just hours. During Prohibition, the Ashley gang's reputation grew so fierce that many bootleggers avoided their routes, leaving Ashley and his crew to focus more on bank robberies. Ashley's feud with Sheriff George B. Baker intensified, as Baker struggled to catch him despite receiving tips and facing his own tainted reputation. The local community, wary of Baker's corrupt ways, often sided with Ashley, giving him the edge. In early 1924, Sheriff Baker finally got a break in his hunt for John Ashley. He learned from informants that Ashley was hiding in a moonshiner's cabin just 2 miles south of the Ashley family home. The cabin, hidden by thick bushes and scrub, was the perfect hideout. Determined to catch him, Sheriff Baker armed his deputies with weapons from the Florida National Guard and rallied civilians to help surround the cabin. On January 10, 1924, 8 deputies took their positions by dawn, ready to move in. But just as they were about to strike, Ashley's dog started barking, alerting him to their presence. When the deputies shot at the dog, Ashley fought back, leading to a deadly shootout. In the chaos, Ashley killed Fred Baker, the sheriff's cousin, and also fatally shot Ashley's father, Joe Ashley, while injuring his partner, Albert Miller, and Miller's wife, Laura. And Ashley managed to escape through a secret exit, abandoning his wounded wife as her screams caused the deputies to hesitate. Despite a massive search involving 200 men and the burning of several homes, Ashley evaded capture, eventually fleeing to California. Months later, driven by revenge, Ashley returned to Florida with plans to assassinate Sheriff Baker. On November 1st, 1924, Baker got a tip that Ashley was traveling up the Dixie Highway and set an ambush at a bridge in Roseland. Sheriff J.R. Merritt of St. Lucie County, with Baker's deputies, blocked the bridge and waited. When Ashley's car approached, the deputies surrounded it and found several guns. During the search, Ashley pulled out a concealed weapon, and a fierce shootout erupted. Ashley and his associates, Ray Lynn, Hanford Mobley, and Clarence Middleton, were killed, ending the Ashley gang's notorious crime spree in Florida. Now, there are 2 different versions of what happened during the final moments of John Ashley's life. The first comes from 2 men who were on a bridge nearby when it all went down. They say that as the police approached Ashley's car, they saw him and his friends already handcuffed. The cops asked them to leave, and they did, leaving behind marks that they claimed were from the coroner's examination. This explanation was accepted by the coroner's jury, but there's another version, found in the 1996 book, Florida's Ashley Gang, by historian Ada Coates Williams. In this account, a deputy, who spoke to Williams in the 1950s, claimed Ashley was handcuffed, but made a sudden move, causing the officers to shoot. This deputy asked Williams to keep this secret till the involved officers had passed away. At the time, many locals believed the police had taken justice into their own hands.
Laura Upthegrove, Ashley's wife, led a troubled life after his death. She was arrested several times before running a gas station, and eventually died under mysterious circumstances, possibly mistaking disinfectant for gin. The Ashley gang's legacy lives on, with only a fraction of their fortune ever found, and rumors of hidden loot still lingering around their old haunts. Now, what do you think about the missing loot? Do you believe it's still out there, hidden somewhere in the Everglades? And if you found it fascinating that this story was forgotten, then you're only going to be spellbound when you learn about Pretty Boy Floyd. Check out this video right here.